If there were one individual whose death during World War II could cripple the Japanese combined fleet, it would be undoubtedly Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. Following the Battle of Guadalcanal, the American forces remained quiet for 3 months, preparing for the next phase of their offensive. The situation on the battlefield was extremely unfavorable for Japan. After a series of defeats, with less than 400 aircraft in the South Pacific theater, while the US forces had around 500 aircrafts. Moreover, with their strong production capabilities, the Allies were increasing their aircraft count by about 100 each month. As the strength of both sides became more and more imbalanced, Admiral Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet, grew increasingly uneasy. In March 1943, in order to solidify existing defenses before an American offensive and to prevent a repeat of the Guadalcanal disaster, Yamamoto devised Operation No. 1. This plan aimed to concentrate 389 land-based and carrier-based aircraft from Rabaul Air Base to conduct airstrikes against Allied naval and ground forces in Guadalcanal. To Yamamoto, this was a gamble. If successful, it could provide a glimmer of hope for the Japanese in the South Pacific. On April 1st, recognizing the importance of this operation and internal conflicts among the Japanese naval aviators and carrier pilots, Yamamoto was advised by his staff and Admiral Ugaki to personally go to the front lines to coordinate and boost morale. On April 3rd, Yamamoto arrived in Rabaul with Admiral Ugaki. On April 5th, according to the plan, the Japanese were supposed to bomb Guadalcanal, but due to heavy rain, the operation had to be postponed for 2 days. On the morning of April 7th, with clear weather, Admiral Yamamoto, dressed in his immaculate white naval uniform, bid farewell to the pilots from Rabaul Airfield who were about to execute the bombing mission. While it was customary for naval commanders to bid farewell to their fleets, it was unprecedented for a commander to see off pilots. Witnessing Admiral Yamamoto personally seeing them off filled the Japanese pilots with fervor, and they vowed to not disappoint their leader. At 9 in the morning, a fleet of 157 fighters and 67 dive bombers launched toward their target. 6 hours later, the fleet returned to Rabaul. Seeing the commander's gesture, the squadron commander, not wanting to disappoint Yamamoto, falsely reported their achievements, claiming to have sunk 1 American cruiser, 1 destroyer, 2 medium-sized transport ships, and 2 small transport ships, damaged 3 transport ships, and shot down 41 American aircraft. However, in reality, the Japanese action had minimal impact, with the American losses being slight, limited to 1 destroyer, 1 escort vessel, and 1 transport ship. Blinded by happiness, Yamamoto believed the exaggerated reports without verification. In their elation, Yamamoto urged the pilot to rest and prepare for another assault on New Guinea in a few days. On April 12th and 14th, the Japanese deployed nearly 200 aircraft in 2 bombing raids on Port Moresby, New Guinea, destroying a total of 22 American aircraft and sinking 2 transport ships. However, it had become of a habit for Japanese pilots to exaggerate their achievements. Once again, upon returning, they inflated their achievements, claiming to have sunk 30 American ships and destroyed over 100 aircraft. During the 10-day Operation No. 1, the Japanese launched 4 attacks, sinking 2 American transport ships, 1 destroyer, 1 escort vessel, and shooting down or destroying 31 aircraft. However, they suffered losses of 59 aircraft, with 17 more damaged. Accounting for 30% of all participating aircraft, a ratio of 1 to 2 was evidently a failure. Many officers had known the truth through various channels, but since the battle reports had already been sent to Tokyo headquarters, everyone had to keep the secret to themselves and dare not to inform Admiral Yamamoto. Upon feeling jubilant, he ordered his adjutant, Watanabe, to schedule a day to visit the frontline troops in Solomon Islands to boost morale. Considering that the Japanese communication had been intercepted by the Americans multiple times before, Watanabe initially intended to send special envoy to deliver the itinerary arrangement to the front line. However, due to the confidence of the communication officers in the new encryption system, which had just been activated on April 1st, they believed that there was no possibility of the Americans deciphering it. Therefore, Yamamoto's itinerary was transmitted via radio. The message read as follows: the commander-in-chief of the combined fleet is scheduled to inspect Belisle, Shortland, and Buin bases on April 18th. Soon, the Japanese message was intercepted and successfully decoded by the Americans. Upon seeing the decrypted message, Admiral Layton, the head of intelligence for the Pacific Fleet, immediately had an idea. He promptly handed the message to Nimitz, who, upon reading it, also became excited. He asked Layton, "What do you think about this?" Layton thought to himself, "Why hesitate? Let's talk about it." Yamamoto, due to his involvement in the Pearl Harbor attack, was considered a deity-like figure in the eyes of the Japanese, second only to the emperor. Eliminating him would significantly dent the Japanese morale. Nimitz also wanted to eliminate Yamamoto, but as the supreme commander of the Allied forces in the Pacific theater, he needed to consider the overall situation. He was concerned that if Yamamoto died, Japan might find someone even more capable to command the combined fleet. which would be counterproductive. Seeing Nimitz hesitating, Layton confidently said, "The Japanese won't find anyone better to replace Yamamoto." At this point, Layton took the opportunity to flatter his superior. "You are irreplaceable in the US Navy, just like Yamamoto in the Japanese Navy. As they say, flattery will get you everywhere." Encouraged by Layton, Nimitz drafted a telegram and sent Yamamoto's activity schedule to the front line under Halsey command. In the telegram to Halsey, Nimitz stated that if he had the capability to take down Yamamoto, he was authorized to begin devising a combat plan. However, Nimitz realized that eliminating Yamamoto was not just a military operation, it could also entail political implications. Therefore, he sent another telegram to Washington requesting Roosevelt's decision. On April 15th, Roosevelt convened a meeting with officials to discuss the matter. Some of the officials present believed that assassinating enemy senior officer was not honorable and could tarnish the international reputation of the United States. Additionally, if the Japanese knew that Americans can decipher their new codes, then the Japanese changing their codes could pose difficulties for future Allied operations. However, the generals present, including Marshal and Chief of Naval Operations Joseph King, advocated for killing General Yamamoto, arguing that where Yamamoto was headed on the front line, there was no distinction between a naval admiral and an ordinary soldier. They were all legitimate targets. This action would not tarnish the international reputation of the United States. After hearing everyone's opinions, Roosevelt pondered for a while and approved the combat plan. The US military named this operation Operation Vengeance, signifying the revenge for Pearl Harbor. Upon receiving the orders, Halsey immediately assigned a combat mission to Rear Admiral Michel, commander of the Solomon Island Air Group. Michel knew the importance of the mission and promptly began to mobilize troops. On April 16th, the mission was assigned to the 339th Fighter Squadron stationed at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal. The interception aircraft were 18 P-38 Lightning fighters. These 18 P-38s were divided into two groups as planned. 12 of them were responsible for engaging the 6 escorting Japanese Zero fighters from high altitude, commanded by Major Michel, the squadron leader. The other 6 were tasked with the interception mission, led by Lieutenant Lanphier. After meticulous calculation, the 339th Squadron dived at the Yamamoto plane at 9:45 a.m. The entire plan formulated by the US military was kept strictly confidential, unknown to the Japanese. However, considering the volatile situation in the area Yamamoto was to inspect, which was combat zone, and the lack of air superiority for the Japanese, the Japanese commanders advised against Yamamoto's trip, hoping that he would cancel the journey. Commander of the 3rd Fleet, Admiral Ozawa, suggested that if commander insisted on the inspection, then the escort forces should be strengthened. Facing the dissuasion of his subordinates, Yamamoto remained stubborn, insisting that decisions once made could not be changed and there was no need to reinforce the escort. 6 Zero fighters were sufficient. Seeing Yamamoto's determination, Ozawa had no choice but to approach Chief of Staff Ugaki, hoping to allocate more fighters. Unfortunately, Ugaki was running a high fever at the time and the matter had to be dropped. On the early morning of April 18th, Henderson Field on Guadalcanal was bustling with activity as Rear Admiral Michel specially arrived to see off the attacking squadron. He issued orders to the pilots, even if it meant collision, they must bring down Yamamoto's aircraft. At 7:30 a.m., everything was ready. Michel assembled the pilots and gave the order to attack, emphasizing strict radio silence during the flight. At precisely 8 a.m., the punctual Yamamoto departed Rabaul as planned. Before leaving, General Kimura, commander of the 8th Army, came to dissuade him. Despite conflicts between the Japanese Army and Navy, Kimura and Yamamoto were gambling buddies. Kimura didn't want anything bad happening to his friend. However, Kimura's goodwill was rejected by Yamamoto. At 9:34 a.m., the American squadron reached the designated airspace. At 9:45 a.m. sharp, Yamamoto's arrived as scheduled. However, contrary to the intelligence, the Japanese had 6 Zeros and 2 twin-engine land-based attack planes. The additional attack aircraft was with Admiral Ugaki. Subsequently, all 10 P-38s responsible for cover rapidly climbed to 6,000 meters altitude to lure the Zeros to pursue. While they engaged, Lieutenant Lanphier's group of 6 P-38s lingered at 3,500 meters altitude, closely monitoring the appearance of the 2 land-based attack planes. At this moment, the Zeros realized they had been deceived and desperately dove down. However, it was too late. The Japanese Type 1 land-based attack aircraft lacked engine armor protection, and once ignited, the fire was difficult to extinguish, jokingly referred to by the Americans as a Type 1 cigarette lighter. Faced with the continuous strafing from the American aircraft, Yamamoto's plane burst into flames instantly, trailing along black smokes as it rapidly descended toward the forest below. 1 minute later, the land-based attack aircraft carrying Ugaki was also hit. However, he was fortunate. The plane fell into a nearby sea and Ugaki grabbed onto a floating crate, desperately swimming toward the shore, saving his life. Lieutenant Lanphier, responsible for interception, didn't know which plane Yamamoto was on, but seeing both planes shot down, he sent a telegram back to the base stating that Yamamoto had perished. In reality, Yamamoto didn't die from the crash. Before the plane went down, he was already dead, with a bullet piercing his left shoulder and another entering from the rear left side of his jaw, exiting from above his right eye. On April 19th, a Japanese search team found Yamamoto's body. To stabilize public morale, the Japanese authority ordered strict censorship of the news, only announcing Yamamoto's death to the outside world on May 21st. Afterwards, in order to convince the Japanese that Yamamoto's interception was just a coincidence, the Americans deliberately sent out fighter jets to fly aimlessly near the incident site for several days. The pilots responsible for interception were also immediately recalled without holding a celebration banquet to prevent leaking secrets. Thanks to the effective secrecy, the Japanese didn't learn until after the war that Yamamoto's death was due to the code being deciphered. Upon the announcement of Yamamoto's death, Japan mourned nationwide, and the combined fleet, having lost its central figure, began its decline. In the subsequent war, the Japanese Navy remained passive and Japan's defeat became inevitable.